Hello, my friends. It is so good to have you here with me today. Pull up a chair, find a comfortable spot, and let's just take a breath together. Now, imagine for a moment a man who has everything: power, wealth, an entire empire at his feet. He can do anything he wants. He can live in luxury. He can take what he wants and give nothing back. But instead, every single morning, this man sits quietly and writes in a small notebook. He writes about how to be patient, how to be kind, how to do what is right, even when it is hard. He does not write these words for anyone else to read. He writes them only for himself, as a reminder, as a lesson, as a kind of promise he makes to himself each day. Who was this man? His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he was the most powerful person in the world. He was the emperor of Rome. And yet, he lived like a student, always learning, always questioning, always trying to be better. Today, on Storyline English, we are going to follow his journey, from a quiet childhood in Rome to the highest throne in the ancient world, to his final, peaceful days. This is a story about power and wisdom, about struggle and stillness, about what it truly means to be a good human being. And as you listen, you will also be learning English, naturally, calmly, through the beauty of a real story. So stay with me. Let the words wash over you, and let the journey begin. But before we do, if you are new here, welcome. Storyline English is your calm place to grow. Please subscribe and leave a comment telling us where in the world you are listening from today. We truly love hearing from you. Now, let us go back, almost 2,000 years back, to the city of Rome. The year was 121 AD. The city of Rome was the center of the world. It was loud, busy, and full of life. Thousands of people filled the streets every day. There were markets and temples, soldiers and merchants, rich families and poor families, all living together in one enormous, powerful city. And in a quiet house, not far from all of that noise, a baby boy was born. His name was Marcus Annius Verus. We know him today as Marcus Aurelius. His family was wealthy and respected. His grandfather had served as a governor and was highly trusted by the emperor. So, from his very first days, Marcus was surrounded by people of importance and influence. But something was different about this boy. From a very young age, Marcus was serious. He was quiet. He was curious. While other children played in the streets of Rome, Marcus preferred to sit and think. He liked to ask questions. He liked to listen to teachers. He was not in a hurry. He was not loud. He was the kind of child who watched the world carefully and tried to understand it. His father died when Marcus was very young, just 3 years old. So Marcus was raised mostly by his grandfather and his mother. They gave him a good home, a safe life, and, most importantly, the very best teachers that Rome could offer. And it was through those teachers that Marcus first discovered the thing that would shape his entire life. A discovery that changed everything. But what was it? We will find out very soon. As Marcus grew older, his education became the most important part of his life. His family hired many teachers, teachers of language, history, law, and public speaking. Rome believed that a well-educated person was the highest ideal, and Marcus took every lesson seriously. He worked hard, he listened carefully, he did not waste his time. But one day, Marcus met a teacher who was different from all the others. This teacher did not just teach words or dates or laws. He taught Marcus how to think, how to live, how to be a good person. This teacher introduced Marcus to a school of thought called Stoicism. Stoicism is a philosophy, a way of thinking about life. It teaches that we cannot always control what happens to us. We cannot control the weather, or other people, or bad luck. But we can always control how we respond. We can choose to be calm. We can choose to be kind. We can choose to do what is right, no matter how difficult things become. For Marcus, this was not just an interesting idea. It felt true. It felt real. It felt like something he had always believed deep inside, but had never had the words for before. He began to study Stoicism with great passion. He read, he wrote, he thought deeply. He asked questions and listened to the answers. Philosophy became more than a subject for Marcus. It became a way of life, a daily practice, a quiet adventure of the mind. And here is the interesting thing. At this same time, far away in the imperial palace, the emperor of Rome was watching this young boy very closely, and he liked what he saw. What would happen next would surprise even Marcus himself. The emperor of Rome at this time was a man named Hadrian. He was powerful, intelligent, and always thinking about the future of Rome. And one of his greatest concerns was this: who would lead Rome after him? He had no son of his own, so he watched the young men of Rome carefully. He looked for someone serious, someone wise, someone who could be trusted with the greatest responsibility in the world. And his eyes kept coming back to young Marcus. Marcus was still a teenager, but Hadrian saw something rare in him. A combination of intelligence, calmness, and genuine goodness. Hadrian made a decision. He arranged for a man named Antoninus Pius to become the next emperor, but only under one condition. Antoninus had to adopt Marcus as his son. This meant that Marcus, this quiet, thoughtful boy who loved books and philosophy, was now officially in line to become the emperor of Rome. Marcus did not ask for this. He did not seek power or glory. In fact, when he later wrote about this period of his life, he described it with simplicity and humility. He was grateful, but he was also aware of the great weight that was now placed on his shoulders. He continued his studies, he continued to learn from his teachers, and he continued to write, in private, in his notebooks, trying to understand himself and to prepare himself for a role he never expected. Life, it seems, had chosen him. And the question was not whether he would accept it. The question was, what kind of emperor would he choose to be? For nearly 20 years, Marcus lived in the shadow of Emperor Antoninus Pius. He was not yet the emperor, but he was learning everything he needed to know. He worked alongside Antoninus every day. He helped with decisions. He listened in meetings. He observed how the empire was governed, how laws were made, how conflicts were resolved, how the needs of millions of people were balanced against each other. It was a long, slow, patient education, and Marcus was grateful for every moment of it. During these years, Marcus also built his personal life. He married a woman named Faustina. Together they had many children, though not all of them survived, a painful reality of life in the ancient world. Marcus experienced loss, worry, and sorrow, just like any ordinary person. But he always returned to his philosophy. He always returned to the idea that life brings both joy and pain, and our task is to face both with grace and steady courage. He was also writing during these years, not for others to read, but for himself. These private writings would one day become one of the most famous books in history, known as the Meditations. But we will return to that later. For now, Marcus was still a student of life, still preparing, still learning. And then, in the year 161 AD, Emperor Antoninus Pius died peacefully. The throne of Rome was now empty, and the entire empire turned its eyes toward Marcus Aurelius. He was 40 years old, and his greatest journey was just beginning. When Marcus Aurelius became emperor of Rome, he did something that no emperor had ever done before. He refused to rule alone. He asked his adopted brother, Lucius Verus, to rule beside him as a co-emperor. Rome had always had one emperor. Marcus chose to share the power. This was not weakness. This was wisdom. He believed that the empire was too large and too complex for one person alone. And so, from the very beginning of his rule, Marcus showed the world a different kind of leadership, one based on humility, cooperation, and honest thinking. But the world did not give Marcus a quiet or easy time. Almost from the moment he took the throne, problems arrived like waves on a shore. In the east, the Parthian Empire, a powerful enemy, attacked Roman territories. Marcus sent Lucius Verus to lead the army there. The war was long and hard, but Rome eventually won. However, the soldiers who returned from that war brought something terrible back with them. A deadly disease that spread quickly across the empire. It killed millions of people. It weakened cities. It created fear and chaos. This plague lasted for years, and Marcus faced it with the only tools he truly trusted: calm thinking, careful decisions, and an unshakable commitment to do what was right for his people. He did not panic. He did not hide inside his palace. He worked. He organized help for the sick. He kept the government functioning. He kept Rome moving forward. Even when everything around him was difficult, Marcus Aurelius remained steady, like a tree in a storm, bending but never breaking. Perhaps the greatest contrast in the life of Marcus Aurelius is this one. Here was a man who loved peace, who loved books and quiet thought, who spent his happiest hours writing in a private notebook, and yet he spent most of his reign at war. For much of his time as emperor, Marcus had to travel to the northern borders of the empire, to a region we now call Germany and Austria. There, tribes of people, the Germanic tribes, were pushing against the borders of Rome. They were strong, brave, and determined. And Marcus had to lead the Roman army against them, year after year, in cold and difficult conditions, far from the warmth and culture of Rome. He did not love war. He never described battle with excitement or pride. He saw it as a duty, something painful but necessary to protect the people of the empire. And even in his military camps, in the cold nights of the north, he continued to write. He continued to think. He continued to work on himself. The words he wrote during those years, tired, far from home, surrounded by the sounds of a military camp, are some of the most beautiful and honest words ever written by any human being. He wrote things like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was talking to himself, reminding himself, teaching himself, because even the most powerful man in the world needed to keep learning. And that, my friends, is one of the most beautiful things about this story. Let us pause the action for a moment. Let us step away from the wars and the politics and the throne. And let us talk about a small notebook. Because that small notebook is perhaps the most important thing Marcus Aurelius ever created. We do not know exactly when he started writing it. We know it was during the difficult years of his military campaigns in the north. He was tired. He was far from home. He missed Rome. He missed quiet. And so, at night, by the light of a lamp, he wrote. He wrote reminders to himself, simple thoughts, short lessons. He wrote about patience, about kindness, about accepting difficulty without complaint. He wrote about how quickly life passes, how even the greatest emperors and heroes are forgotten with time. He wrote about how the most important battle is always the one inside ourselves. He never gave these writings a title. He never planned for anyone else to read them. They were private, deeply personal. A conversation with himself. But after his death, these writings were collected and preserved. And today, nearly 2,000 years later, they are known as the Meditations. They have been translated into almost every language in the world. People read them in the morning before work. People read them when they are sad or confused or afraid. People read them when they need to be reminded of something simple and true. A Roman emperor, writing alone in a military camp 2,000 years ago, never imagined that his private words would become a gift to all of humanity. But that is exactly what happened. And that is the quiet miracle at the heart of this story. One of the most important things to understand about Marcus Aurelius is this. He was not perfect. He made mistakes. There were moments in his reign that were difficult and even painful to examine honestly. One of these was his treatment of early Christians. In the Roman world, Christians were sometimes seen as a threat to the traditional order of society. Under Marcus, some Christians were persecuted, treated badly, and punished for their beliefs. This is a part of his story that historians discuss carefully. It sits uncomfortably beside his beautiful words about kindness and justice. And this is something worth remembering. Good people can still make serious mistakes. Wisdom does not arrive all at once. It comes slowly, imperfectly, through experience and reflection. Marcus himself wrote about this. He knew he was not perfect. He wrote about his failures with honesty. He did not pretend to be a saint. He was a man, trying his best in an imperfect world with limited understanding. He also struggled deeply as a father. He had a son named Commodus, and as Commodus grew older, it became clear that he was very different from his father. Where Marcus was calm, Commodus was impulsive. Where Marcus loved wisdom, Commodus loved power and spectacle. Marcus made the decision to make Commodus his heir, the next emperor. It is a decision that many historians question, but Marcus perhaps hoped that his example would guide his son. It did not, and Marcus, in his final years, must have carried that worry quietly, alongside everything else. Life rarely gives us perfect answers. It only gives us choices, and we do our best with what we know. By the late 170s AD, Marcus Aurelius was tired. He had been emperor for nearly 20 years. He had fought wars, survived plague, managed an empire, raised a family, and all the while continued to write, to think, and to try to live according to his philosophy. His body was beginning to slow down. He was often unwell. But he did not stop. He continued to work. He continued to lead. He returned to the northern frontier in his final years because the Germanic tribes had not yet been fully settled. He felt a responsibility to finish what he had started. And it was there, in the north, far from Rome, far from the warmth and culture he loved, that Marcus Aurelius became ill for the last time. He knew the end was near. The accounts of his final days describe a man who was calm, a man who had made peace with death long ago. He had written in his meditations, "It is not death that a man should fear, but rather he should fear never beginning to live." He had lived, fully, thoughtfully, honestly. He had tried every day to be better than the day before. He had carried the weight of an empire with as much grace as any human being could. In March of the year 180 AD, Marcus Aurelius died. He was 58 years old. When the news reached Rome, people mourned deeply, not just because they had lost an emperor, but because they felt they had lost something rarer than power. They had lost a leader who genuinely tried to be good, and Rome would not see his like again for a very long time. And so, my friends, we have come to the end of our journey today. We have walked beside Marcus Aurelius from his quiet childhood in Rome, through years of learning and preparation, through wars and plagues, and the heavy responsibility of an empire, all the way to his peaceful final days. It has been a long journey, a rich journey, a journey full of lessons that feel just as true today as they did 2,000 years ago. And what are those lessons? They are simple, but they are deep. Marcus teaches us that power without wisdom is dangerous, but wisdom without action is also not enough. He teaches us that every single day we have a choice. We can choose to respond to difficulty with anger and blame, or we can choose to respond with calm and thought. We can choose to be a little better today than we were yesterday. He also teaches us something about learning itself. Marcus never stopped learning. Even as the most powerful man in the world, he sat down every day and reminded himself of the things he needed to know. He was humble enough to be a student for his whole life. And that, my friends, is exactly what you are doing right now. You are learning English, a new language, a new way of seeing the world through story and listening. That takes patience. That takes courage. That takes the same quiet determination that Marcus showed every single day of his life. Do not give up. Keep listening. Keep learning. This is your journey, and it is a beautiful one. If today's story stayed with you, please leave a comment below and tell us, what part of Marcus Aurelius's life surprised you the most? We truly love reading your thoughts. Subscribe to Storyline English so you never miss a story. Share this episode with a friend who is also learning English. And come back soon, because the next story is already waiting for you, and it is just as beautiful as this one. Until then, my friend, keep going. You are doing something wonderful.